You're holding something that once felt like you. Maybe it's an old blazer hanging in the back of your closet from a season when your work shaped much of how you saw yourself, or a box of papers from a business you poured your heart into. Maybe it's an old planner filled with goals that once lit you up, plans you cared deeply about, worked hard toward, and organized your life around. Then, one day, you flipped through those pages and realized something quietly surprising. Those goals no longer stir the same feeling in you. Not because they weren't meaningful, not because that season didn't matter, but because something in you had changed. Sometimes it's a short bio you've written 100 times: mother, professional, helper, leader, caretaker, achiever, dependable one, and suddenly a quiet thought rises. These words describe pieces of my life, but they don't fully describe me anymore. That realization can stop you in your tracks, and honestly, it can feel unsettling. Most people don't talk about that. There can be grief in outgrowing a version of yourself, even when that version served you well. Identity often shifts long before we consciously recognize it. Most people build who they become around what is rewarded, what feels secure, and what makes sense in the season they're living. Life asks something of us, or at least what we believe it does. And little by little, we become the version of ourselves that seems most needed, the one who can handle things, keep going, help others, stay dependable, and be whatever the moment asks us. After a while, those ways of being become so familiar that they no longer feel like roles we step into. They simply start feeling like who we are. The truth is, many parts of our identity were built in response to life: what we survived, what was asked of us, and what particular season needed from us. Some of those ways of being still serve us, others quietly stop reflecting who we are becoming. Researchers have studied this too. Part of it is explained through identity foreclosure, committing early to a version of self before fully exploring what feels personally true. In everyday language, you became very skilled at being someone before discovering whether that version fully reflected who you were becoming. When there's a disconnect between who you've been and who you're becoming, life can start to feel surprisingly tight. Things that once energized you may not carry the same spark. Routines that used to feel normal can begin feeling restless or heavy. And underneath all of that, there's often a quiet longing for more space or simplicity and a life that feels more honest and more fully your own. I think a lot of women quietly carry that feeling. It may show up when children grow up and need less from you, and the role that shaped so much of your daily life begins to shift. For some, it arrives when a career they spent years building no longer feels deeply connected to who they are now. Other times, it grows quietly after years of caregiving, constant responsibility, or always being the one others lean on. And for many, there comes a moment when they realize they've become incredibly capable, but quietly disconnected from what makes them feel alive without noticing. That's worth noticing. If you felt that pull, it's worth listening to. Often, growth begins organizing life from the inside out. A tree offers a helpful picture here. Healthy pruning isn't destruction, it's careful release. It removes dead weight, clears what no longer supports growth, and opens space for healthier branches to stretch toward the light. Life sometimes needs that same kind of clearing too. It can mean loosening your grip on labels you've carried for years, stepping back from obligations you've quietly outgrown, or rethinking versions of success that no longer feel true to who you are. It may even mean noticing the roles you automatically fall into and asking whether those expectations were ever really yours to begin with. Letting go can feel uncomfortable because familiarity, even uncomfortable familiarity, still feels safe. But staying overgrown has a cost. It can quietly drain vitality, dull joy, and leave you feeling disconnected from your own direction. So begin here. If you pay attention, there's probably a version of you that shows up almost on autopilot. The one who handles things, takes care of people, and keeps pushing forward because that's who you've learned to be. One simple way to notice that pattern is to write that version of yourself down on a note card and keep it somewhere you'll see it throughout the day. Then, when you catch yourself slipping into that familiar role, just make a small mark. Nothing heavy, no judgment attached to it, just honest awareness. What often surprises people is how quickly those little marks begin telling a story. Patterns become easier to see. Automatic responses become easier to recognize. And once you can clearly see a pattern, you're finally in a position to choose something different. That's where real freedom begins. At day's end, look at the card and ask, did I consciously choose that role today? Or did I automatically return to it? What that reveals can be very powerful. From there, choose one small act that reflects who you're becoming. That might look like letting someone solve their own problem, speaking more honestly, creating breathing room in your schedule, or making small choices that feel more true to who you are now. Little by little, something begins shifting. You start sounding more like yourself again. Decisions become clearer, your relationships feel more honest, and life stops feeling like something you're performing and starts feeling like something you're actually living. There's usually a little more peace in that, a little more room to breathe, and a quiet kind of confidence that comes from finally living in a way that feels true to who you are. If this message connects with where you are, I'd love to stay connected. The links are below. Remember, progress doesn't come from pressure, it comes from clarity.